A young girl arrives at her new home, a quaint cottage in a village. Inside, she gazes in wonder as a glowing piece of metal is being forged. Holding the rough blade, she remarks that it's starting to look like a sword. Her eyes light up as she prepares for the next step of the forging process. She plunges the hot blade into a bucket of liquid, causing a huge splash. A brilliant flash of light emanates from the bucket, startling her for a moment. She proudly holds aloft a newly completed short sword, amazed at her success. Energized by her achievement, she happily decides that she wants to make even more. However, her enthusiasm is cut short when she discovers her material box is empty. Looking at her clean hands, she decides her blacksmithing work is over for now. She stands for a moment, contemplating her next move with empty hands. Her attention then shifts to a sturdy wooden door inside the cottage. She recalls a letter from a god mentioning a dungeon located inside the house. Opening the door, she peers into the dark, cavernous passage that lies beyond it. As she ventures inside holding a candle, she discovers walls embedded with sparkling crystals. She marvels at the beautiful sight, feeling as if she's entered a fantasy world. Taking out a pickaxe, she immediately gets to work mining the cave walls. She successfully gathers various ores, including iron, topaz, and even valuable mithril. This new life is a stark contrast to her past, where she was burdened with work. In her previous life, she was an exhausted office worker, pushed around by her colleagues. Her former boss smirks, callously stating that subordinates exist to be exploited for profit. A colleague argues back, but he dismisses her, questioning her competence and usefulness. Overwhelmed by the constant pressure and toxicity, she slumps over her desk in despair. In her mind, she felt utterly trapped, with no joy and absolutely no means of escape. Her consciousness starts to fade as the weight of her miserable life becomes too much. Suddenly, she finds herself standing in a strange, empty void, confused about her surroundings. A divine being appears before her, explaining that her fate was mistakenly intertwined with another's. She processes this information, asking the figure if she is dead and who he might be. He calmly reveals that in her world, he is known by the name of God. The woman looks down, murmuring the word God as she tries to grasp the situation. The god explains it wasn't her time to die and offers to revive her as an apology. However, with a weary smile, she shocks him by saying she doesn't want to go back. She recounts the hellish life she endured, with a horrible boss and soul-crushing overtime. Sensing the deep exhaustion in her soul, the god looks on with concern, pondering her state. He then asks to peer into her memories, to understand the source of her despair. A memory surfaces of her lying in bed, wishing for a simpler life like in a game. Her greatest desire was to leave her frantic life behind and live peacefully as a blacksmith. Understanding her wish, the god proposes sending her to a world very much like her game. As part of his apology, he offers to gift her a powerful, unique blacksmithing skill. She is absolutely ecstatic, realizing he's offering her a skill, a forge, and a new home. The god then offers to also change her appearance and age to match her ideal form. She is instantly transformed into a young girl, excitedly realizing she resembles her favorite game's hero. Seeing her new form, the god cheerfully asks what she would like her new name to be. Without hesitation, she decides to adopt the name of the game's protagonist, Melia. With her new identity set, the god prepares to transport her immediately to the new world. As a final warning, he cautions her about monsters that become more active during the night. He then activates a magical device, and a bright light begins the transportation process. Watching her depart, the god muses that this is his first time sending a soul between worlds. Melia then finds herself back in her new home, cheerfully counting the weapons she forged. Looking over her impressive creations, she wonders what to do with them all, since she can't use them. Her inventory includes a bronze knife, iron shuriken, and even a lustrous mithril shield. She proudly holds up a golden hammer, amazed that she was capable of crafting such an item. A warm, happy feeling spreads through her as she fully accepts that this is her new reality. She imagines adventurers putting her weapons to good use and hopes someone will want them. After organizing her creations on a table, she takes a moment to breathe and decide her next move. A brilliant idea suddenly strikes her. and her expression fills with newfound determination. She decides the best course of action is to go into town and sell the items she made. However, upon stepping outside, she realizes she doesn't know which direction the village is in. Just as she panics, a helpful map interface appears in her vision, showing the way. She then discovers she has an item box, allowing her to easily store and carry all her weapons. An hour later, Melia stumbles through the woods, completely exhausted from her long walk. She finally reaches the village, but she's famished and on the verge of collapsing from hunger. A kind local girl with braided pigtails approaches her, asking if she needs any help. Sitting on the ground, Melia struggles to think of how to explain her sudden appearance. Suddenly, a system notification reveals her unique status as an otherworlder, surprising her. She panics internally, desperately hoping no one finds out she's the only one from another world. Composing herself, she explains she's new to town and simply got hungry on her way. Hearing this, the girl, Mina, cheerfully invites Melia to her home for a meal. Mina leads her through the village streets to a building that serves as an inn and eatery. Inside, she proudly shows Melia a large, simmering pot of stew, explaining their inn also serves food. Melia is served a hearty bowl, commenting on the wonderful aroma as she thanks Mina for the food. Her eyes widen in delight the moment she takes her first bite of the delicious meal. With her cheeks full, she expresses her immense gratitude, calling the food incredibly tasty. She smiles brightly and thanks Mina again, telling her the meal is the best she's had. Blushing with pride, Mina happily reveals that her father was the one who cooked it. Melia thinks Mina is adorable and compliments her father for his amazing cooking skills. However, Mina's expression suddenly turns somber, and Melia wonders if she said something wrong. A wave of anxiety washes over Melia as she tries to figure out what could be the problem. Mina hesitates for a moment before starting to explain her situation to Melia. She sadly tells Melia that her father has been too busy with preparations to play with her lately. Melia learns from Mina that her father's prep work is slow because his kitchen knives are all dull. The simple problem of a dull knife gives Melia an idea, her expression lighting up with purpose. She considers the possibility that skills for sharpening and maintaining blades might be uncommon in this world. Remembering her blacksmith skill allows for repairs, she confidently offers to sharpen the knife for them. Mina's large, skeptical father appears, doubting that a young girl could possibly be a blacksmith. Trying to hide her nervousness, Melia formally asks to borrow his knife and a space to work. He reflects on how blacksmithing is a complex and difficult profession, usually left to master artisans like dwarves. Though the father remains unconvinced, Melia insists she has the proper skills for the job. Mina then pleads with her dad, hoping a sharper knife will let him rest his sore shoulder. Deeply touched, he realizes how much his daughter has been worrying about his well-being and exhaustion. After sharing a tender look with Mina, he turns his serious gaze back toward Melia. He finally agrees to let her try, and upon inspection, Melia sees how worn the blade truly is. She focuses with an intense concentration, channeling the same dedication she used in her past office life. Mina peeks over the counter with a worried expression, asking Melia if she is doing okay. Warmed by the girl's genuine concern, Melia smiles and reassures her that it's going great. With swift, expert motions, she glides the knife's edge across the whetstone, carefully honing the blade. The knife gleams with a brilliant light, now perfectly sharpened, astonishing both Mina and her father. Visibly impressed, the father asks if he can test the newly restored blade's cutting power. He takes a piece of fruit and makes a quick, decisive slice with the gleaming knife. The fruit splits perfectly in two, revealing the blade's incredible, almost magical sharpness. The father beams with joy, promising Mina he can now finish work early and play with her. Overjoyed, Mina gives Melia a big hug, thanking her for helping them reunite with her father. The father then tries to pay Melia for her service, but she kindly refuses his offer. She thinks to herself that the god already provided her with more than enough money to live on. He insists, however, stating he can't accept such high-quality work without proper compensation. He explains their village lacks a blacksmith, making it difficult to maintain their cooking equipment. As an alternative form of payment, he offers her free meals at the inn, which she gladly accepts. As evening sets in, Melia lets out a sigh of relief, feeling content with the day's events. Later, in her room at the inn, she smiles, happy that her first real task went so well. Recalling the god's warning about nighttime monsters, she decides it's safest to stay at the inn. For her excellent service, the family treats her to a relaxing, hot bath in a large wooden tub. She learns that baths are a luxury here, grateful that her own home came equipped with one. After her bath, she falls onto a soft bed, fully embracing the start of her new life. She reflects on how kind Mina and her father were, a stark contrast to her lonely past. Suddenly, a strange, fiery creature materializes in her room with a flash of bright light. A brilliant portal opens, and a mysterious voice echoes, entrusting something important to her. The creature lands in a bucket, transforming into a tiny snake amidst sparkling water. The voice explains that this is a divine familiar, a guardian of water sent to protect her. Startled, Melia immediately recognizes the voice as belonging to the very same god who sent her here. The god smiles gently, having sent the creature to her so she wouldn't be all alone. Slightly flustered after her bath, Melia worries that the god might have been watching her. She then notices the small white snake from the bucket is staring intently back at her. Looking at the tiny creature, she cautiously asks if it's really here to protect her. To her amazement, the snake nods, and she realizes it needs a name to form a bond. The small divine familiar gives a definitive nod, confirming its role as her guardian. Inspired by a memory from her world, she decides to name the adorable creature Fluorite. The name Fluorite, known as the Firefly Stone in Japan, felt fitting for the sparkling familiar. The creature seems to telepathically ask if that is truly to be his name from now on. Melia is completely stunned for a moment, realizing she can somehow hear the snake's voice. Fluorite confirms their contract is complete, lovingly calling her master as he coils around her head. With a bright smile, she officially welcomes Fluorite as her new partner and protector. Happy to have made such a cute new friend, she tells him it's time for them to sleep. The next morning, Melia sits down at the dining table for a wholesome breakfast at the inn. She gratefully says her thanks before digging into the meal prepared for her. While enjoying her food, she remarks on how delicious everything at Mina's home is. She offers a piece of bread to Fluorite, who happily accepts the small morsel. Mina enters the room and stops in her tracks, shocked to see the little snake with Melia. Melia happily explains her new friend is a divine familiar, which Mina finds incredibly cute. Mina's father thanks Melia again, then asks about her plans, since his prep work is done. Upon hearing she's a blacksmith looking to sell weapons, he smiles, saying she's in the right place. He advises her to visit the Adventurers Guild, which is conveniently located right across the street. Taking his advice to heart, Melia gratefully thanks him for pointing her in the right direction. She waves a final goodbye to Mina before setting off to find the guild and start her business. Arriving shortly after, she gazes up at the ornate sign that marks the entrance to the guild. The building is large and impressive, looking exactly like something she would see in a fantasy game. As she peers through the gates, she hopes this might be the place to get an identification card. Before heading inside, she asks Fluorite to stay hidden and pretend to be a simple bracelet. The moment she opens the door, her presence is noted by someone with exceptionally sharp hearing. She sees a handsome beast man with cat ears and a tail dozing peacefully at the reception desk. Melia is momentarily speechless, completely captivated by seeing a real cat person for the first time. She cautiously approaches the counter, assuming he must be the one in charge of the front desk. Internally, she's overwhelmed by his charmingly cat-like appearance as he stretches lazily. When she speaks up to get his attention, her voice startles him so badly, he jumps straight up. He quickly apologizes for not noticing her sooner, and she nervously stands before him. The receptionist introduces himself as Jean, prompting her to reply that she is Melia, a blacksmith. Jean hands her a form, explaining that registering with the guild also provides a valid ID. She also decides to register as an adventurer to gain access to monster materials for crafting. After quickly filling out the required paperwork, she hands the clipboard back over to John. He confirms everything is in order, and then uses a magical device to create her new guild card. He presents her with the official card, which clearly lists her name and profession as a blacksmith. Clutching her newly acquired guild card, Melia beams and expresses her sincere gratitude to Jean. Jean mentions the guild also purchases weapons, and with an interested look, asks to see her inventory. She notices his tail wagging back and forth, much like a curious cat eyeing a new toy. Pleased by his apparent interest, she eagerly confirms that she has brought her crafted weapons with her. With a focused expression, Jean carefully inspects the various unique weapons Melia lays out on the counter. As he continues his appraisal, his tail keeps swishing, a clear sign of his growing excitement. Melia feels a bit anxious, but she remains confident in her work, thanks to the skill from the god. Jean suddenly exclaims in astonishment, asking what these strange and unconventional weapons could possibly be. He seems particularly impressed by the unfamiliar designs, calling a kunai cool and a chakram thin and circular. With stars in his eyes, he excitedly admits he's never seen anything like them and asks how they're used. Melia mentally scolds herself, realizing she should know how to properly explain her own creations. After a brief pause to gather her thoughts, she prepares to demonstrate the weapons for him. She explains the chakram is a bladed ring, and the kunai is a projectile, adopting a throwing stance. Jean's amused smile makes Melia blush, as she mistakenly thinks he is laughing at her demonstration. Without hesitation, he throws the kunai with startling speed and precision across the guild hall. It strikes a bulletin board dead center, and he cheerfully comments on how easy it is to throw. Melia is left completely dumbfounded by his incredible, seemingly natural skill with the unknown weapon. In awe, she asks if he has truly never used one before, amazed at his immediate proficiency. He explains his experience as an adventurer, gives him a natural intuition for handling any weapon. Highly impressed, Jean praises the excellent craftsmanship and offers to buy her entire stock on the spot. Overwhelmed by his generous offer, Melia bows deeply and thanks Jean for his patronage. She feels a profound sense of joy and relief, knowing that her hard work and skills are appreciated. As he watches her, a brilliant idea suddenly sparks in Jean's mind, a clever grin spreading across his face. With his tail wagging playfully, he starts to make a suggestion that could change her business prospects. He proposes that she should try opening her own stall to sell her wares at the local village market. Jean explains that since many merchants gather there, he's confident her unique items would sell quickly. He also admits his personal interest in seeing more of her work, which makes Melia think about the opportunity. She realizes that participating in the market would be an excellent way to establish her reputation as a blacksmith. Excitedly agreeing to the idea, John tells her he will arrange a letter of introduction from the village chief. Melia processes this new turn of events, feeling a bit dazed but hopeful about the future. She soon finds herself standing before a grand and impressive estate, identified as the village chief's home. Jean confidently reassures her that the village chief will be more than happy to welcome her. Her heart races with nervousness as she wonders why the chief would be so pleased to meet her. From inside, a well-dressed man observes the small girl walking up the path to his gate. Taking a sip of his hot beverage, he spots his unexpected guest and wonders about her purpose. He is struck by her cute appearance, revealing a personal fondness for adorable things like small animals. While pouring a cup of tea, he recalls Jean's message about a new blacksmith arriving in town. Once inside, Melia is treated to a spread of delicious-looking pastries, amazed by the warm hospitality. The village chief welcomes her with a kind and dazzling smile, expressing his genuine pleasure at her visit. She recalls being greeted at the gate, completely shocked when the man asked what business she had with him. The village chief personally serves her a cup of apple tea, welcoming her with a warm gesture. She is taken aback by the kind reception, realizing that John was right about the chief being welcoming. He formally introduces himself as Mark Forgeman and promptly asks to see some of her crafted items. Melia eagerly agrees, pulling out the remaining weapons from her bag that she didn't sell to the guild. Mark looks on with a knowing smile, seemingly anticipating the quality of her work. However, his composure breaks as he internally fawns over her, seeing her as an adorable little squirrel. She presents a beautifully crafted dagger, remarking on how cute she finds its design and finish. Mark is lost in thought, imagining how cute she would be while eating the sweets he's provided. As she formally presents her wares, Mark snaps back to reality, trying to regain his professional demeanor. He admits to himself that he gets easily distracted by cute things before deciding to seriously inspect the weapon. Determined to act as a proper village chief, he examines the dagger, his eyes widening at its quality. He praises the excellent craftsmanship, noting that Jean's glowing recommendation was indeed accurate. Impressed, he informs her that the next market is in 1 week and asks if she can participate. Mark issues her a temporary permit, promising her an official ID after the market in a week's time. Just as their meeting seems to conclude, he pauses and asks if he can ask her a personal question. With a serious tone, he inquires why someone so young is working as a blacksmith all by herself. Thinking quickly, Melia explains she was an orphan, raised by a master blacksmith who taught her everything. She continues the fabricated story, stating she inherited her late master's house in this very village. Mark accepts her explanation with a look of sympathy, understanding why she is now on her own. He offers her pastries for the road, but she politely declines, feeling guilty about her little white lie. Feeling she has overstayed her welcome, Melia decides to take her leave from the village chief's home. As she explains her need to prepare for the market, a sudden glint from the wall catches her attention. Her eyes are drawn to a collection of beautifully displayed swords, and she wonders if he's a collector. A skill reveals one ancient silver sword is critically damaged and will break completely in just a few days. Unable to ignore the weapon's plight, she calls out to Mark just as he offers her snacks for the road. She points to the sword and passionately offers to repair it, promising to make it last much longer. Mark turns his head, his gaze falling upon the specific sword she indicated on the wall. His expression becomes somber and unreadable as he acknowledges the sword with a quiet, knowing smile. He tells her not to worry, explaining it's just a sentimental old blade he can't bring himself to discard. Melia's face falls with disappointment as she realizes he has gently turned down her sincere offer. She feels dejected, assuming he won't trust a stranger with such an important memento, despite her skill. However, Mark clarifies that the repair is simply not a task important enough to bother her with. His gentle and considerate refusal leaves Melia feeling more confused than rejected by his words. He advises her that her time would be better spent preparing for her debut at the village market. Melia glances back at the sword, wondering if he is just being polite or truly hesitant to accept help. With renewed determination, she clenches her fists and insists that it would be no trouble for her at all. Blushing earnestly, she says she would be delighted to help and asks him to please leave it to her. Her passionate display of determination catches him off guard, seeing her as a feisty little squirrel. He is genuinely touched that she cares so deeply about the old sword he had long neglected. Finally agreeing, he is stunned when she confidently promises to return the repaired sword by tomorrow. Back at her cottage under the starry night sky, Melia steels her resolve for the task ahead. Inside her workshop, she prepares to unsheath the sword and begin the meticulous repair process. As the blade comes free, however, she gasps in surprise at an unexpected discovery on the hilt. Beneath the layers of grime lies an incredibly intricate decoration, revealing a hidden, detailed emblem. Her skill identifies it as the official crest of the Flugel royal family, leaving her utterly stunned. She realizes that just like her, the people of this world carry their own complex and unseen histories. Working through the night, she puts all her effort into restoring the mysterious, sentimental blade. The following day, the sword lies completely restored to its former glory, gleaming with a brilliant shine. Presenting the blade to Mark, she watches as he stares down at it, speechless and lost in thought. She explains that the blade is now fully functional, though she worries about his quiet, subdued reaction. He remains silent for a moment longer, his gaze fixed intently upon the newly polished steel. A flood of memories returns, showing him as a young boy receiving that very sword for the first time. He had been clinging to the past, unable to discard the blade, but accepting it would someday break. In the present, his eyes are filled with a deep nostalgic emotion he thought was long gone. Seeing its restored brilliance makes him feel a profound connection to the hopeful boy he once was. Clutching the hilt, he is overcome with emotion before softly speaking her name, Melia-kun. With genuine gratitude, he extends his hand and offers her a heartfelt and sincere thank you. Melia beams with joy, taking his hand and expressing how glad she is that she could help him. As she smiles brightly, Mark looks at her with a completely new and very serious expression. A brilliant idea strikes him, and he suddenly asks her if she would consider becoming his daughter. However, Mark admits to himself that this is just what he wants to say, leaving Melia utterly confused. She stands there, completely baffled by his sudden and intense emotional shift, unsure how to react. He quickly clarifies his strange behavior, explaining he was just overwhelmed with happiness, that she cared for his sword. Beaming with pride, she happily tells him he can count on her for any repairs in the future. Mark looks at her with tears in his eyes, deeply moved by her kindness and genuine spirit. Overcome, he tearfully pleads for her to call him father, before quickly regaining his composure to see her off. Melia leaves the grand estate, still processing the strange and emotional encounter with the village chief. As a parting gift, he gives her some final, motherly advice, warning her to be careful on her way home. She happily makes her way back through the peaceful forest path, heading toward her own cottage. Walking home, she reflects on the day's events, glad that her offer to help was so well received. She dreams of opening her own shop one day, and Fluorite offers his full, unwavering support. Remembering her market debut, she hurries home, unaware that she is being watched from the shadows. A mysterious, horned figure lands softly, wondering about the sudden appearance of a house in this forest. Back in her workshop, Fluorite announces he can hear the voices of the pots she's crafted. Melia is amazed to learn that her divine familiar possesses the incredible ability to hear objects speak. He relays the pot's thoughts, telling her it's looking forward to the fun of being used for work. Feeling a similar connection, Melia grips her hammer, sharing the same excitement as her eager creations. A week quickly passes, and Melia finds herself setting up her stall in the middle of the bustling market. She carefully lays out her sparkling, newly forged cooking knives and pots, arranging her display for customers. With everything perfectly arranged, she suddenly realizes she completely forgot to decide on the prices for her items. Completely absorbed in her work, she suddenly panics, realizing she forgot to set prices for her items. She then remembers her conversation with Jean at the guild, where he discussed weapon buyback prices. He had appraised the copper sword at 2000 B, and the disposable kunai at a reasonable 400 B each. Using his appraisal as a benchmark, she decides to base her cookware prices on his expert valuation. As she contemplates pricing a frying pan around 10,000 B, a loud bell suddenly echoes through the village. The ringing bell signals the market's official opening, and she quickly finishes setting up her stall. An enormous crowd rushes into the market, and she anxiously wonders if anyone will visit her stall. To her astonishment, a mob of villagers swarms her stall, all clamoring to buy her pots and pans. Completely overwhelmed by the sudden demand, she is swamped with customers all trying to buy at once. Amidst the chaos, a familiar voice calls out her name, holding up one of her ornate ladles. It's Mina from the inn, who has come to support her with a bright smile, asking to buy a pot. Melia is surprised to see her, learning that Mark had told Mina she would be at the market today. Mina proudly explains that she told all the inn's customers about the kind blacksmith who fixed their knives. Deeply touched, Melia realizes Mina's enthusiastic word-of-mouth advertising is the reason for her success. Other villagers express their gratitude, explaining how much they needed a local blacksmith for their tools. Having sold out of all her cooking utensils, she feels she is finally teaching the village her purpose. Just as the crowd finally disperses, a familiar voice cheerfully calls out her name from nearby. Jean from the guild arrives, impressed by her roaring success, and asking if any weapons are left. He leans in with a curious and focused expression, inspecting the remaining items on her table. His eyes are fixed upon a set of 3 expertly crafted, ring-pommeled throwing knives she had made. She proudly explains to Jean that the throwing knives are especially durable because they contain a bit of mithril. Hearing the word mithril, Jean's eyes widen in absolute shock and disbelief, a cat-like grin appearing. His loud exclamation of mithril echoes through the entire marketplace, turning every head in their direction. Nearby adventurers are stunned, expressing their disbelief that such a rare material could be found in their village. Instantly, a new wave of adventurers mobs her stall, all clamoring to see and buy the mithril weapons. Amidst the sudden chaos, Melia realizes she still hasn't decided on a price for the very items causing it. Based on the overwhelming demand, she nervously sets the price at 30,000 B, worrying it might be too high. To her surprise, the adventurers call it a bargain and immediately line up to buy out her entire stock. From a distance, a group of shady men observes the commotion, noting that her stall seems very profitable. In no time at all, she has to put up a sign announcing that all her mithril weapons have sold out. Jean apologizes for shouting and causing the pandemonium, but she thanks him for helping manage the customers. After the rush finally subsides, Jean suddenly turns to her with a serious, almost exasperated expression. He scolds her for selling the rare mithril items so cheaply, stating she undervalued her work significantly. Just then, her divine familiar Fluorite peeks out from her bag with a worried look on his face. Fluorite telepathically explains that since mithril is a dwarven secret, her price was likely missing a 0. As her familiar retreats back into the bag, John is left utterly speechless by this new, startling revelation. With nothing left to sell for the day, a new sign is put up, officially closing her stall. Jean stands beside her, congratulating her on an exhausting but incredibly successful first day at the market. As they leave, she thanks him again for his invaluable help, admitting she couldn't have managed alone. He reassures her with a gentle pat on the head, saying his guild work makes him an expert at service. With a warm smile, John asks Melia how she enjoyed her very first, albeit chaotic, market experience. She fondly recalls the happy villagers and the success of her cookware, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. Beaming with joy, she tells him that she had a wonderful time and is eager to do it all again soon. Impressed by her positive attitude and enthusiasm, John gives her a cheerful thumbs up of approval. He then waves goodbye, encouraging her to explore the rest of the market's stalls before heading home. Her attention is immediately drawn to a stall selling delicious-looking skewers of grilled meat and vegetables. Happily munching on her snack, she strolls through the market, remarking on the universal joy of good food. Suddenly, Fluorite pops out of her bag, urgently telling her he senses another familiar just like him nearby. Following his direction, she discovers a small, dark, bird-like creature huddled sadly inside a wooden cage. The shopkeeper explains the creature is a divine familiar, a servant of the god of darkness. Melia is absolutely stunned to find such a sacred being for sale in what appears to be a butcher shop. The little bird looks up at her with large, tearful eyes, its expression filled with profound sadness. Moved by its plight, she decides she must rescue it and asks the butcher if she can buy the creature. When the butcher asks if he should prepare it for cooking, she frantically insists on taking it alive. She then walks through the village streets, carefully cradling her newly acquired and very mysterious companion. Remembering how she bonded with Fluorite, she realizes she must give the bird a name to communicate with it. Inspired by its beautiful dark feathers, she lovingly decides to name her new familiar Onyx. The bird flaps its wings excitedly, chirping its new name with pure, unadulterated joy and affection. Melia formally introduces herself, and her new companion seems to greet her with equal enthusiasm. She gently pets Onyx's head, thinking to herself how unbelievably cute her second familiar is. As she walks home, an unfamiliar voice suddenly calls out to her from a shadowy alley. She finds herself surrounded by the shady men from the market, who menacingly ask for her bag. Clutching Onyx tightly, she has a horrifying realization that she is about to be mugged. The thugs try to snatch her bag away, but she struggles fiercely, telling them to let her go. Onyx springs into action, flying at one of the men and pecking at him with surprising ferocity. Suddenly, a tall, cloaked figure appears, expressing his distaste for seeing a group attack a small child. The imposing stranger, revealed to be a demon, declares that their cowardly actions offend his sense of beauty. He has long white hair, large black horns, and a confident smirk that reveals a pair of sharp fangs. The thugs are paralyzed with fear, realizing they have provoked a powerful member of the demon race. As they turn to flee in terror, the demon calmly comments on the unpleasant noise they are making. He dispatches them with brutal efficiency, leaving Melia to wonder if he is actually helping her. While the demon is distracted, she quickly retrieves her dropped bag with Onyx's help. Her two familiars affectionately nuzzle against her, reminding her to thank the mysterious stranger for his help. The demon stands over the unconscious thugs, noting with some annoyance that one of them managed to escape. Gathering her courage, Melia knows she must properly express her gratitude to her unexpected savior. He asks why she hasn't run away in fear, but she simply asks why she should fear her benefactor. Intrigued by her unusual response, he smirks and comments on how interesting she is for a human. She is left confused by his cryptic remark about demons being strange creatures, unsure of his meaning. Looking down, she then notices that Onyx is glowing with a faint, ethereal light, just like fluorite. The demon correctly identifies her companions, pointing out that they are divine familiars from the gods. She is shocked that the demon immediately saw through the divine nature of her two familiars. The demon looks down at her with a serious, almost analytical expression, contemplating her very existence. He explains that he can perceive a sacred light emanating from her and her familiars, asking what she is. Faced with his sharp perception, Melia realizes that it would be pointless to try and hide the truth. She decides to be honest, revealing that she is an otherworlder brought here by a god's power. His eyes widen with interest as he processes her incredible claim of being from another world. He questions her about meeting a god, expressing some doubt despite the presence of her familiars. Melia looks back at him, confused by his skeptical tone and his familiarity with the divine. With a sad expression, he wonders aloud if the gods harbor a hatred for the demon race. Seeing his lonely expression, she is immediately reminded of Onyx when she first found him in the cage. Acting on pure impulse, she reaches up and gives the tall, sad demon a comforting pat on the head. Completely flustered by the unexpected gesture, he stammers an apology while complimenting her soft hair. He quickly introduces himself as Lyross before vanishing, leaving her standing alone in the alleyway. Just then, Mark and Jean arrive on the scene, shocked to hear a demon was just there. Mark looks at the unconscious thugs, asking Melia if the demon was the one who attacked them. She quickly clarifies the situation, explaining that the demon had actually saved her from the muggers. Hearing this, Mark's expression turns incredibly grave as he looks down at her with deep concern. He explains that for a human to meet a demon and escape unharmed is nothing short of a miracle. Mark worries about her naive perception, wondering if she truly understands the danger demons pose. For her safety, he insists on having adventurers escort her the rest of the way home immediately. Clutching Onyx, she reflects on Mark's grave expression, wondering if demons are truly as evil as he implied. Meanwhile, Mark orders Jean to issue an urgent investigation request to find any nearby demons. He clenches his fist in frustration, overwhelmed with worry for the seemingly defenseless young girl. Jean whispers to Mark, suggesting that to truly protect her, perhaps adopting her is the only way. He points out that the creatures she carries are divine familiars, not just a chicken and a snake. Mark is completely stunned by this revelation, uttering the word familiars in utter disbelief. While Mark has heard of them, Jean notes he couldn't sense any normal animal presence from them at all. Jean ponders Melia's mysterious origins, questioning where she could have possibly come from so suddenly. Mark relays her story about inheriting a master's house, but admits he hasn't heard of such a thing. His thoughts drift back to Lyross, and he wonders about Melia's true identity, calling her an interesting girl. Elsewhere, the god who sent Melia decides it is finally time for them to have a conversation. Back home, Melia is completely exhausted, while her familiars resolve to become stronger to protect her. The very next day, a series of loud, echoing booms suddenly reverberates through the nearby forest. Melia wakes up with a big yawn, realizing she overslept and that it's already midday. As she sits up, Onyx excitedly calls for her attention from the side of the bed. She discovers Fluorite offering his freshly shed skin to Onyx, who in turn offers up a glowing egg. Greeting her familiars, she is taken aback by the brilliant glow emanating from their strange gifts. A system window reveals Onyx's gift is a divine egg that extends lifespan by 10 years. Stunned by this incredible power, she then turns her attention to the gift from Fluorite. His shed skin is revealed to be a divine material that can repel malice and even reflect magic. The young girl reacts with wide-eyed shock, realizing that her companions are cleverly trying to outmaneuver her with malice. Crouching down, she asks her two small companions what is wrong, noting they are both mysterious, rare items. With large, pleading eyes, the snake creature begs her not to go into the village on this day. Understanding they are worried for her, she accepts their warning about the danger, acknowledging that home is safest. A man with a sinister grin recalls the previous day's events, noting how scary Flo and Onyx were. The girl hugs her bird creature tightly, agreeing to avoid the village and have a welcome party at home. Her companions burst with joy, celebrating that they have become a family and thanking their new master profusely. She embraces them back, expressing her own happiness at gaining such a wonderful and adorable new family. Melia peacefully reflects on her solitary arrival in this world, never having expected to find a family. Suddenly, a bright flash transports her, leaving her floating surprised and weightless within an empty white void. Looking around in a panic, she remembers promising her companions that she would be staying at home with them. Feeling a strange sense of déjà vu, she spins around dizzily, desperately trying to understand where she is now. A radiant, godlike figure appears before her in a burst of light, announcing he has something to discuss. Looking up at the divine being, the small girl is left wondering what he could possibly want to talk about. She nervously speculates if this is about Onyx, admitting that she took the creature in without asking permission. The god smiles warmly, reassuring her that Onyx is fine and thanking her for providing the creature with help. He then begins to explain about the world she is in, specifically about the nature of the demon tribe. The god reveals that he created the demon tribe in the same way he created humans, elves, and dwarves. Melia realizes this is why the villagers reacted so badly. Other races rejected the demons, causing terrible relations. The god confirms the villagers likely hate demons, but he urges her to understand they are not inherently evil. She listens intently as the god explains that the life of every race holds an equally precious value. The god then addresses Melia directly, stating that there is something for which he must apologize to her. He sent her to this world to fulfill her wish, but he warns that racial conflict might now interfere. Subsequently, he apologizes and offers to find her a different world if she is unhappy with the current one. Melia is taken aback by the offer, pondering the concept of another world and this sudden divine correspondence. She then recalls the hardships from her past life, concluding that difficult situations exist in any world. Therefore, she explains that even in her short time here, she has found a family and is deeply grateful. Hearing her resolve, the god smiles warmly and accepts her decision to remain in this world. As a parting gift, he bestows upon her a protective charm, promising that he will continue to watch over her. However, the god has a final, unspoken thought that he keeps from Melia as she begins to fade away. He reflects that her very presence is already influencing the relationship between humans and demons, an unavoidable change. Though he can only watch, he hopes she will increase her allies so she does not lose her place. Suddenly, Melia finds herself back outside her house, joyfully exclaiming that she has returned safely. Her companions rush to welcome her home, and she warmly embraces Onyx, who intuits she was with the god. The bird creature flutters excitedly, exclaiming how wonderful it is that she was in the god's presence. After the warm reunion, Melia stands alone for a moment, wondering why she returned to the garden specifically. All of a sudden, a giant, fluffy, rabbit-like creature bounds out from the bushes, surprising her and Onyx. The creature's incredibly soft, fluffy paws bounce gently across the grass as it moves through the yard. Following the first one, several more of the fluffy rabbits appear, hopping playfully all around the garden. As her companion calls to her, Melia looks down in astonishment, noticing the color of the soil has changed. Her companions eagerly suggest she name the new creatures, exclaiming they are just like them and should be welcomed. Melia sits in the garden, concluding the god must have sent them, and agrees to give the newcomers a name. Holding one of the fluffy creatures in her arms, she gently decides to name the rabbit-like being Amber. The name Amber is chosen because it represents the power to convey the very life force of the earth. Subsequently, the newly named Amber introduces itself as a divine beast of the earth, greeting its new master formally. Melia welcomes Amber, adding that the creature feels like an older sister compared to Flo and Onyx. The fluffy creature seems immediately taken with the ribbon on Melia's dress, nuzzling against it affectionately. Startled by its own actions, the fluffy rabbit utters its name, Amber, in a moment of surprised realization. Amber then bashfully apologizes, explaining that it was simply captivated by how cute its new master's ribbon was. Delighted that Amber likes ribbons so much, Melia joyfully announces that Amber will also join their welcome party. While standing in her garden holding a bundle of flowers, a brilliant idea suddenly strikes the young girl. She immediately gets to work at her anvil, using rare items from her companions and a matching ribbon. Her work is now complete. A welcome gift set of a resonance bell, and a resonance ring is crafted. Surprised that her creation spontaneously gained a skill, she happily presents the gifts she made for everyone. All three of her companions are overjoyed by their presents, expressing their immense gratitude for the thoughtful gifts. Beaming with happiness, Melia tells them the new accessories suit them perfectly, wishing she could take a picture. Flo proudly shows off the new ring, which is now fitted perfectly around the end of its tail. In the same way, Onyx wears its new bell and ribbon with a quiet and dignified sense of pride. Meanwhile, Amber looks absolutely delighted with the charming new bell tied securely around its neck. She then serves a celebratory meal, joyfully telling her precious family that there are plenty of seconds for everyone. 1 week later, Melia prepares to leave, reassuring her companions she is only visiting the guild as previously promised. Onyx immediately objects to this plan, vehemently arguing that the village remains far too dangerous for her to visit. She attempts to reason with the bird, explaining that since a week has passed, she just wants to check on things. Moreover, she feels an obligation as a blacksmith to deliver items, worrying that people might be waiting for her. As a compromise, Flo volunteers to go along and protect her, while suggesting Onyx and Amber guard their home. The group ultimately agrees to this arrangement, with her companions promising to either protect her or watch over the house. Arriving at the guild, she feels confident that she will be safe inside with Jean and pushes open the doors. Stepping through the doorway, she cheerfully announces her arrival, stating that she has brought some items to sell. However, she is immediately surprised to find the main hall of the guild completely empty, wondering where everyone is. Suddenly, an older man with a cane emerges from a back room, introducing himself to her as Blues, the guildmaster. Melia formally introduces herself as a blacksmith, after which the guildmaster invites her to a different room to appraise her wares. She nervously agrees to follow him, quietly hoping that he will be pleased with the quality of her craftsmanship. Once inside the room, the guildmaster mentions her name, cryptically stating that they were just talking about her. He then leads her through another door into an adjacent room where several other men are gathered and waiting. 2 of the men immediately show hostility, one angrily confirming to the guildmaster that this girl is indeed Melia. As the door slams shut, Melia recognizes the aggressive men from her previous encounter, and her resonance bell starts glowing. A signal from the glowing bell instantly travels from the guild all the way back to her distant cottage. This magical alert is a result of the unique resonance skill embedded within the gifts she crafted for her family. Back at home, Amber is startled when the bell tied around its neck begins to ring loudly on its own. Similarly, Onyx is alerted by its own bell ringing, causing it to realize their master is now in terrible danger. Understanding the bell signal's danger, Onyx declares he will fly to the village to rescue their master immediately. To Amber's astonishment, Onyx then transforms into a giant version of himself, big enough for her to ride. Together, they soar through the sky at great speed, unaware of a winged, horned figure watching them from afar. The mysterious figure, Lyross, looks up in surprise, wondering what the peculiar flying pair could possibly be. Meanwhile, Melia slowly regains consciousness, finding herself in what appears to be a dark, dusty, and unfamiliar room. As her vision clears, she discovers with a jolt that she has been bound tightly with thick, coarse ropes. Lying on the floor, she frantically questions her location and confinement, then notices that her bag is also gone. Suddenly, Flo peeks out from her collar, relieving her greatly by confirming he is safe and asking what happened. Flo explains that the guildmen rendered her unconscious and brought her to a cabin, leading Melia to realize she was kidnapped. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps approaches as one of her captors observes that she has finally woken up. The men enter the room, angrily throwing down her empty bag while demanding an explanation for the missing weapons. One of them then recalls the market rumors about her mithril, realizing that her supposed lie could be advantageous for them. Following this, the guildmaster steps forward and menacingly demands that she reveal how she obtained the valuable mithril. Struck with fear, Melia understands their true objective is to steal her mithril and that the guildmaster is their accomplice. Despite her terror, she shouts back defiantly, stating that of course the bag has no weapons because it is just a normal bag. In truth, she possesses an item box skill gifted by the god, which she has cleverly disguised as an ordinary bag. However, she resolves to never explain the truth about her bag or the origin of the mithril to these wicked men. The guildmaster laughs cruelly at her defiance and begins to cast a sinister-looking spell using his ornate cane. His accomplices warn her that resisting will only amplify the power of the curse he is preparing to unleash. A sharp pain courses through her body, but with tears welling in her eyes, she remains resolute, refusing to submit. She grits her teeth, wishing she possessed the power to use it for righteous reasons. However, the guildmaster laughs maniacally, declaring that the weak exist only to be exploited by the strong. His cruel logic painfully reminds her of her abusive boss from her past life, shattering her spirit. As her strength fades, she begins to despair, realizing she can't even protect her small companion, Flo. He again demands she reveal the secret of the mithril, clutching his cane as it crackles with dark energy. Suddenly, a deep voice cuts through the tension, remarking on how unrefined their conversation has become. The captors whirl around in shock, demanding to know who the intruder is and where their lookout went. Lying on the floor, she recognizes her savior, Lyross, who seethes with rage upon seeing her condition. He furiously declares that he will not forgive them, unleashing a powerful blast of dark energy. The incredible force of the attack sends both of the men flying backward across the room. Just then, the entire side of the cabin explodes outward as Onyx and Amber finally arrive on the scene. The guildmaster trembles in absolute terror, pleading for the approaching demon to stay away from him. Lyross glances back, momentarily surprised by the sudden arrival of the giant bird and its fluffy passenger. The guildmaster picks himself up, angrily cursing them all as foolish brats who never learn their lesson. Lyross sternly warns the man to never lay a hand on the girl again, as his cane shatters into pieces. Onyx and Amber crash through the destroyed wall, calling out to their master with deep concern. Melia looks up with tears of relief, astonished that her familiars have come all this way to rescue her. Onyx explains that their resonance bells rang, immediately alerting them that their master was in grave danger. She then realizes Lyross must have also come to save her, just as he lands nearby to check on her. As her ropes fall away, he gently helps her up, asking if she's able to move on her own. Sitting on the floor, Melia looks up at Lyross, unsure of how to thank her unexpected, imposing rescuer. Lyross simply states he's always believed it was normal to help the weak, though he seems unsure. However, she reassures him with a bright smile, thanking him sincerely for coming all this way to save her. With a slight smirk showing his fangs, he asks if she is in pain from the ordeal. Before she can properly respond, he sweeps her into his arms, declaring he will escort her home. Meanwhile, Mark and Jean arrive at the destroyed cabin, confirming it's the source of the reported explosion. As they cautiously approach the wreckage, Mark spots one of the unconscious thugs lying at the entrance. Peering inside, he is stunned to see Lyross holding Melia, who is surrounded by a strange, sparkling aura. His eyes widen in alarm as he recognizes both Melia and the fact her mysterious companion is a demon. Mark immediately rushes forward, angrily demanding the demon release Melia and reveal his true intentions. Lyross looks on with a confused expression, while Melia, still in his arms, calmly calls out to Mark. She quickly clarifies the misunderstanding, explaining that although Lyross is a demon, he is her heroic savior. Mark's expression softens with deep concern as he notes her disheveled state and asks about her well-being. From Lyross's arms, she explains she was trapped inside and subjected to a painful curse shocking both men. She then specifies that it wasn't Lyross, but rather the guildmaster who was behind the terrible ordeal. On the floor, the defeated guildmaster weakly stammers Mark's name, confirming his involvement in the plot. Mark turns a cold, furious glare upon the man on the floor, uttering his name, Blues, with pure disgust. He reflects that while he knew Blues was a greedy man, he never imagined he'd go so far. Jean observes the other thugs, concluding that only Blues could have orchestrated such an attack inside the cabin. Blues desperately tries to blame the demon, but Mark examines the shattered cane, finding proof Melia was telling the truth. Mark coldly informs Blues that he is being arrested for the crime of kidnapping a young girl. Blues protests his arrest, arrogantly citing his high status as the guildmaster and his contributions to the village. However, his protests are ignored, as Mark stands firm and 2 guards appear to take him into custody. As the guards restrain him, the disgraced guildmaster struggles and cries out in defiance. A single bead of sweat rolls down his face, his expression now one of utter defeat. Mark declares that the law applies to everyone, regardless of status, and his crimes will be justly punished. He then instructs Jean to deal with the unconscious accomplices, who are also under arrest. With the immediate threat dealt with, Mark's expression remains grim as he ponders the situation. His attention now shifts to the remaining figures in the room, particularly the demon holding Melia. Observing how gently Lyross holds Melia, Mark begins to reconsider his initial assumptions about the young demon. After setting her down, Mark asks if this is the same demon from their previous encounter, which she quietly confirms. Suddenly, the giant bird Onyx lands loudly beside them, startling Mark with its immense size and presence. He recalls Jian's earlier speculation, realizing the massive bird must indeed be one of her divine familiars. Seeing her surrounded by familiars and a demon, Mark concludes that none of this can be a simple coincidence. Deciding to prioritize her well-being, he invites both Melia and Lyross back to his home to tend to her. Lyross is visibly taken aback, questioning if it is truly all right for a demon like him to enter the village. Mark looks him straight in the eye and asks a simple question. Will he promise to protect Melia? With a firm and determined expression, Lyross gives a single, unwavering nod of agreement. Hearing this, Mark seems to accept his answer, finally understanding the demon's intentions are genuine. Sensing the shift in his attitude, Melia decides it is time to reveal her true story to the village chief. Back at the village chief's grand estate, Melia finally feels safe enough to tell her story. Inside, she sits across from Mark with Lyross beside her, the room filled with a tense silence. She hesitates, worrying that revealing the truth might change how the villagers see her as a blacksmith. Her gaze then falls upon the sword she repaired, now sparkling and proudly displayed in a place of honor. Staring intently at the kind village chief, she remembers the trust he placed in her. He had believed in her from their very first meeting, entrusting her with his most treasured possession. With renewed conviction, she decides she must be honest, because she has grown fond of Mark and the villagers. Taking a deep breath, she resolves that this time she will not tell any more convenient lies. Mark listens with a serious expression, sensing the weight of her words as she prepares to speak. She begins by revealing that before her arrival, she did not exist as a person in this world. With a steady voice, she confesses that Mark is left completely speechless by her revelation, recalling her heartfelt wish to be trusted by him. She then explains that she died in another world and was met by a divine being. That very same God was the one who then brought her into this world, reincarnated as Melia. He struggles to process the incredible story, realizing she didn't just come from another country, but another reality. Furthermore, she reveals the god granted her special skills so she could survive in her new life. Mark looks at his restored sword, finally understanding that her incredible blacksmithing ability is a divine gift. He realizes with a jolt that after her explanation, she gestures to her small companions, naming Fluorite, Onyx, and Amber one by one. As she introduces them, they suddenly transform into their larger divine forms, crying out affectionately for their master. She explains her companions are divine familiars, entrusted to her by the god himself. Mark takes in this information, acknowledging that John's initial suspicions about them were indeed correct. She then clarifies that to her, they are more than just familiars. They are her precious family. After laying everything bare, she concludes by stating that this is her complete and honest truth. Mark sits in stunned silence, muttering to himself that this must all be the work of a god. He admits her incredible skill and divine companions now make much more sense in light of her story. She then brings up the demon race, admitting she knows little about them despite her connection to Lyross. She relays the god's words that demons' lives hold equal value, which leaves Lyross completely astonished. Furthermore, she explains that since Lyross has saved her life twice now, she trusts him completely. Mark shoots up from his seat, utterly shocked by the revelation that demons are also a creation of God. He grapples with this new information, as it contradicts the world's belief that demons are born from evil. Though conflicted, he considers that her story, coming directly from a god, is likely the truth. Melia gently reassures her familiars, confident that things will be all right as long as they communicate honestly. Mark decides her divine knowledge must be more accurate than this world's common sense, and turns to them. He directly asks Lyross if he would ever attack villagers without reason, and the demon calmly denies it. A single tear escapes Mark's eye as he accepts this truth, his internal conflict seemingly resolved. Overwhelmed by the revelations, he covers his face and sincerely thanks Melia for sharing her story with him. He then turns away from them, asking for some time alone to process everything he has just learned. Melia looks on with a worried expression, concerned by his sudden need to be alone. Respecting his wishes, she agrees to leave for now, departing with Lyross on Onyx's back. Melia expresses her relief to Lyross, remarking on how incredible it was that Mark believed her story. Lyross then asks her if it's truly what the god said, that demons are considered an equal existence. She confirms this with a confident smile, stating she heard it directly from the god, and he can believe it. Visibly moved by her words, Lyross looks down and thanks her for sharing this profound truth with him. Melia is a little confused by his gratitude, asking him what he is thanking her for. He explains he's happy she trusted him, then offers her a home with him if she ever has nowhere else to go. Blushing at his kind offer, she thanks him while pondering the possibility of being cast out of the village. Suddenly, a horrifying thought crosses her mind, her expression shifting from relief to pure panic. She realizes that if Mark hadn't accepted her, she might have been exiled from the village she loves. As they approach her cottage, she spots several large, fluffy figures waiting for her in the yard. The strange figures are revealed to be a sparkling cow, a fluffy sheep, and a small rodent-like creature. Utterly surprised, she recognizes the animals, sensing the same familiar, divine aura that her other companions possess. Fluorite then pops out, joyfully confirming they are new friends, leading her to believe they are also divine familiars. At Fluorite's insistence, she agrees to give the new arrivals names to welcome them to her growing family. The rodent, now named Ruby, introduces himself as a familiar of fire, while the cow is named Larimar, a guardian beast. The fluffy sheep, now Seraphy, reveals she is a familiar of healing and immediately asks for a hug. Overjoyed by the request, Melia happily embraces the new sheep, delighted to welcome another adorable companion. As she hugs Seraphy, a gentle warmth envelops her, and she feels her pain and fatigue from the kidnapping melt away. Completely refreshed, she smiles and thanks Seraphy, formally welcoming all the new members to her found family. Cradling her new friend, she mentally thanks the god for sending more companions before turning her attention back to Lyross. Lyross notes her impressive familiars and announces that it is time for him to depart. As he turns to leave, she quickly calls out his name, thanking him once more for his help. He flies off into the sky with a wave, promising that they will surely meet again someday. A full week passes with no word from Mark, leaving Melia to anxiously wonder if her story was truly accepted. Seeing her despondent, her familiar Ruby asks if she feels like doing some blacksmithing to lift her spirits. Ruby explains he can help, boasting his divine fire is far superior to any normal flame for forging. Her spirits lifted by the idea, she eagerly agrees and asks him to help her forge something new. Back in her workshop, she works joyfully at the anvil, while Ruby provides the powerful, divine flames for her forge. She crafts a beautiful new resonance bell, feeling the joy of blacksmithing easing her troubled mind. Her work done, she resigns herself to waiting for Mark's reply as a breeze rustles the trees outside. Suddenly, a loud rustling sound comes from the bushes at the edge of the forest nearby. An elf with long blonde hair steps out from the foliage, looking around with a puzzled expression. With a dramatic pose, he wonders aloud where he might find the village where Mark lives. Deciding to take a walk to ease her mind, Melia steps outside and notices the figure in the distance. The elf casually asks a small lizard for directions to the village, much to Melia's surprise. She is completely taken aback, finding it bizarre that he is asking a common lizard for directions. Deciding she can't just ignore someone who is clearly lost. No matter how strange, she cautiously approaches him. When she confirms his destination is Forgemon Village, he becomes overjoyed and eagerly asks for the way. She points him down the correct path, explaining it's about an hour's walk, and he gratefully thanks her. The simple act of helping a lost stranger reminds her fondly of when Mina first helped her find her way. The elf explains he traveled from a distant town and is completely unfamiliar with the surrounding area. With a cheerful wave, goodbye, he thanks her for the directions and continues on his way. As she watches him go, she thoughtfully repeats his words about coming from a faraway town. It suddenly dawns on her that there are countless other villages and cities in this world she has yet to see. Returning to her cottage, she explains to her curious familiars that she was only giving directions to a visitor. Her companions believe that with her divine gifts and their protection, she could live peacefully anywhere she chose. Despite this, she clenches her fist. Admitting the thought of having to leave this village feels incredibly sad. Meanwhile, the village of Forgemon continues its peaceful existence behind its sturdy stone walls. Inside his large and quiet estate, the village chief continues to ponder his difficult situation. 2 whole weeks have now passed, and Mark still finds himself agonizing over Melia's unbelievable story. He recalls her incredible tale of being an otherworlder, sent here by a benevolent god. Although her story sounds unbelievable, he remembers her earnest and naive nature, which makes it seem genuine. Taking a sip of his drink, he decides that, true or not, he must report her words to the royal family. He imagines her being lauded as a saint, which would grant her a comfortable life, but not the one she wants. However, he questions if that is the right path, as a nagging feeling tells him something is wrong. Staring down into his empty cup, he remains unable to find a clear answer to his dilemma. Unable to sit still, he rises from his desk and makes his way toward the window. Looking outside, he is surprised to see the very same elf from the forest standing at his gate. Mark opens the door to greet Faye, who happily announces he is the new guildmaster. With a weary but welcoming smile, Mark places a hand on the elf's shoulder, saying he has been expecting him. The elf, Faye, claps a hand on Mark's shoulder, warmly asking how his old friend has been doing. Mark replies that he is well enough, before quickly changing the subject to ask about the royal capital. With a charming smile, Faye responds that the capital is unchanged, lamenting its distinct lack of natural beauty. He then excitedly shows off a small lizard perched on his shoulder, delighted by the local wildlife. Mark is completely taken aback by the creature, asking if Faye really brought it with him from the forest. While admitting it is cute, Mark insists he return it, leading Faye to tease his friend's unchanging temperament. Once inside, Faye relaxes on the couch and expresses his genuine happiness at finally arriving in the village. He then recounts how he got lost and was given directions by a kind girl with milky tea-colored hair. Upon hearing the description, Mark's expression immediately turns grim as he realizes Faye encountered Melia. Faye quickly notices his friend's dark expression, asking if something has happened to upset him. Mark explains that Faye is one of his few trusted friends, and he needs his counsel on this very matter. The new guildmaster correctly guesses that this concerns the girl involved in the incident with Blues. Mark confirms this is the case, but admits that it isn't a simple problem he can easily explain. He internally struggles, realizing how difficult it will be to relay her incredible story of divine power. Taking a deep breath, he finally decides to trust his friend and begins to tell him the entire story. He concludes by explaining his duty to report her, yet he is hesitant because the story sounds so unbelievable. After hearing everything, Faye simply slaps his knee with excitement, exclaiming, What an amazing child she is. Completely stunned by this reaction, Mark asks if he can actually bring himself to believe such a tale. Faye simply smiles, explaining that he believes the story because it is clear that Mark himself believes it. Faye laughs, stating if Mark believes her, then there is absolutely no reason for him to doubt the story. He correctly deduces Mark's true hesitation. He wants to protect her from the complex affairs of adults. Mark imagines her life in the capital, a gilded cage with better treatment but far less personal freedom. Remembering her innocent smile, he realizes he wants her to have the freedom to choose her own path. Faye asks if that is his final answer, but still reminds him of his official duty to report her. Mark looks down, considering Melia's kind and earnest personality as he weighs his options. Faye concedes that while the truth must be revealed eventually, it doesn't have to be right away. He promises his full cooperation as the new guildmaster, reassuring Mark that everything will be all right. Finally resolved, Mark realizes he was simply using his duty as an excuse because he wanted to see her. Faye knowingly teases his friend, remarking that he can see right through him after all these years. After seeing Faye off, Mark decides to head to Melia's cottage, having gotten directions from his friend. On his way through the village, however, he is suddenly stopped by a concerned group of villagers. Mina's father asks if he has seen Melia lately, as no one has heard from her in quite some time. With tears welling in her eyes, a worried Mina sadly tells him that she misses her new friend. The other villagers chime in, expressing their own concern for the young blacksmith who works with such heart. Touched by their genuine affection, Mark realizes how much the entire village has come to care for Melia. Mina then shyly asks him to deliver a letter to Melia, and he warmly promises to give it to her. Meanwhile, back at her peaceful cottage, Melia remains unaware of the villagers' concern for her well-being. Slumped over her table, she lets out a long, weary sigh, still anxiously waiting for Mark's decision. Onyx suddenly flutters over, asking if she called his name, but she clarifies it was just a sigh. A sudden knock at the door breaks her reverie, and a familiar voice calls out her name. She opens the door to find Mark, who declares he has decided to trust and support her here. Completely stunned by his sudden appearance and words, she can barely process what she is hearing. Tears of overwhelming relief stream down her face as she realizes he is truly accepting her. He reassures her that no matter who she is, the villagers care for her, and she belongs here. With a warm smile, he then hands her a letter, explaining that it is from a worried Mina. Clutching the letter, she reflects on the kindness of her new friends, feeling a deep sense of peace. Overcome with emotion, she finally lets out a loud, cathartic cry of pure joy and gratitude. She runs toward him, tearfully asking if this means she can truly stay with them from now on. With a radiant smile, she leaps into his arms, thanking him again and again for his kindness. He returns the embrace, apologizing for his long silence and thanking her for trusting him with her secret. Unseen from the nearby forest, Lyross observes the heartwarming reunion between the two of them. A small smile plays on his lips as he notes with relief that things seem to be resolved. As he steps out from the woods, Mark notices him, his expression turning serious once more. Mark explains that while he accepts her, it is still too soon for the entire village to welcome a demon. Lyross listens with a quiet understanding, his expression remaining unreadable as he accepts the harsh truth. However, Mark then turns to him, stating he wants to believe Melia, and therefore wants to believe in him. Completely shocked by this declaration, Lyross stares back, stunned that a human would place trust in a demon. Deeply moved by this unexpected acceptance, he expresses his sincere gratitude for the village chief's words. Melia looks up at Mark with a bright, tearful smile, happy that he has accepted her and her friend. Lyross observes them, realizing this change is not due to any divine power. Instead, he correctly attributes Mark's change of heart to Melia's unwavering kindness and pure heart. With a newfound sense of purpose, he makes a solemn promise to be the one to protect her. Mark smiles warmly, asking Lyross to continue looking out for Melia in the future. With their new understanding established, the three of them share a peaceful moment outside her cottage. With a radiant smile, she reflects that on this day, she officially became a member of Forgemont Village. Later, she joyfully reads the sweet letter from Mina, who asks when she'll be back at the market. Deeply touched that her friend is waiting for her, Melia's resolve as a blacksmith is reignited. Filled with new motivation, she declares she will work hard to create even more wonderful items. Energized, she decides to visit the guild for the first time in a while, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Back at the forge, she works with intense focus while Ruby provides the powerful, divine flames. Watching her work, Ruby then suggests she try forging using magic stones for a new challenge. He explains that while normal materials make good weapons, magic stones can create something truly special. Eager to try, she immediately gets to work, attempting to imbue a blade with a magic stone. She successfully forges a beautiful new rapier that grants the user magical abilities. Feeling she has leveled up as a blacksmith, she happily cuddles Ruby and thanks him for his help. Sometime later, a sudden series of knocks echoes from her front door, startling her. Wondering who the rare visitor could be, she calls out and hurries to answer the door. Opening the door, she is pleasantly surprised to find Lyross standing on her doorstep greeting her. Delighted by his visit, she warmly invites him inside, asking what brought him to her home. Inside her home, Lyross is intrigued by her modern appliances, asking what these strange objects are. Melia panics for a moment, suddenly remembering all the otherworldly furniture the god provided for her. She nervously explains that these items, which shouldn't exist in this world, were also gifts from the god. Lyross accepts her explanation, leaving her immensely relieved that he was the one to discover her secret. However, he then gives her a stern warning to be much more careful with any future visitors. His attention is then drawn to her displayed weapon collection, and he remarks her home resembles a shop. His simple comment sparks a brilliant idea in her mind, her eyes widening with sudden inspiration. She reflects that opening her own weapon shop has been a quiet, long-held dream of hers. Now that Mark has officially accepted her, she realizes this is the perfect time to make that dream a reality. Sensing her newfound resolve, Lyross smiles warmly and promises to support her new venture. He even offers to build a sign for her, which immediately gets her thinking about a name for the shop. After a moment of thought, a light bulb goes off, and she excitedly declares she has decided on a name. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Jean processes her shop registration, commenting on the unusual name. She happily explains it's a word she liked from her previous world, much to Jean's continued amusement. With a final official stamp on the paperwork, he wishes her luck with her brand new business. Leaving the guild, her heart beats with excitement as she thinks about all the preparations for opening day. As she walks through a quiet alley, she reflects on the whirlwind of recent events that led to this. Suddenly, the sound of voices from just around the corner catches her attention, and she pauses. She overhears two adventurers arguing about a lost sword, regretting their choice to accept a local subjugation quest. With no armorer in the village, they despair, realizing they can't possibly fight monsters with just one person. Stepping out from the alley, she asks the two despondent adventurers if they have lost a weapon. Interrupting their conversation, she introduces herself as a blacksmith and invites them to visit her new shop. One of the adventurers examines her guild card, confirming her credentials and that her shop is officially registered. Seeing this, the two adventurers excitedly agree to follow her and check out her wares. Overjoyed, Melia leads the way, internally celebrating her very first customers for her brand new shop. However, as they walk, she gets nervous, realizing she impulsively invited strangers to her secret, otherworldly home. She then remembers a letter from the god, which mentioned he had prepared a normal-looking dummy room for guests. Clutching the special key, she feels a wave of relief, while her new customers admire her cute demeanor. Arriving at the cottage, she formally welcomes the adventurers inside, her first official patrons. She nervously takes out the key, hoping this dummy room will function, as the god had promised. Successfully leading them into the prepared room, she tells them she will go and fetch her weapon selection. The adventurers are immediately impressed, commenting on the wide and excellent variety of weapons she has on display. While serving them tea, she beams with pride, overjoyed to finally have customers admiring her craft. After thanking her, the adventurer is pleased with the hospitality, as her familiars stay safely hidden away. The female adventurer then quietly confides in Melia admitting she was actually happy when the sword was lost. Her partner erupts in frustration, complaining that she shows more affection for his sword than for him. He then leans in and asks Melia to keep a secret for him, much to her stunned surprise. He laments that his partner is already popular, and he can't handle having a sword as a rival. When she asks why he won't confess, he sadly admits he's afraid of ruining their current friendship. With a pained smile, he asks her to just laugh it off, not wanting to burden her with his troubles. Before he can say more, his partner interrupts, asking Melia if she has a moment to speak with her. She explains that as a half-elf, she needs a weapon that complements her use of magic in combat. Seizing the opportunity, Melia proudly presents the magic stone rapier she recently forged with Ruby's help. The half-elf tests the blade, immediately impressed by its quality, and decides to purchase it on the spot. However, she then turns to Melia with a serious expression, asking if her partner said anything strange. She sighs, admitting he gets moody whenever she talks to others, and she feels bad for not understanding him. Sensing an opportunity, Melia assures her that everything is fine, a clever idea forming in her mind. She then blurts out to Neville that his partner knows all about his secret, unrequited love for her. The half-elf's face turns beet red as she stammers in embarrassment, completely caught off guard by the revelation. A bolt of realization hits Melia as she understands that their feelings for each other are actually mutual. Flustered, the half-elf tries to quickly pay for the sword, clearly anxious to escape the awkward situation. Seeing their mutual affection, Melia decides she must do something to help the flustered couple connect. She asks them to wait for a moment, and quickly disappears back into her personal workshop. Recalling a bit of lore, she remembers the elven tradition of gifting matching accessories as a symbol of love. Hoping to bridge the gap between them, she puts all her heart into crafting a special, meaningful gift. She quickly forges a beautiful pair of matching moonstone bracelets, which are known as a lover's token among elves. Returning to the showroom, she presents the bracelets to them as a complimentary gift for visiting her shop. She hands the gift to Neville, encouraging him to be honest with his feelings, assuring him it will be okay. As the happy couple departs, they wave goodbye, sincerely thanking the little blacksmith for all her help. Watching them leave, she reflects on her shop's name. Standing proudly by her new sign, she believes their meeting was a mysterious and wonderful stroke of fate. Meanwhile, the two adventurers walk through the forest, and Chris asks what Neville received from the young blacksmith. Hesitantly, he begins to untie the ribbon on the small, unassuming bag she gave him as a parting gift. Inside, he discovers the sparkling elven bracelets and recalls Melia's encouraging words to just be honest. Realizing this is his chance to confess, he shyly asks Chris if she will wear one of the bracelets with him. Holding the ornate jewelry in her hand, she immediately recognizes it as a traditional symbol of love in elven culture. The two of them share a deep, knowing look, and with a blush, she happily accepts his proposal. Now a couple, they decide to promote Melia's amazing shop once they return to the capital city. Back at her cottage, Lyross returns, guessing she is eager to tell everyone about successfully registering her shop. With that, Melia soars through the sky on the back of a giant onyx to share the good news. She soon arrives at Mina's inn, her motivation restored, and her appetite ready for a delicious meal. Happily eating at the table, she expresses her gratitude for being welcomed as a true member of the village. Mina pops out from the kitchen, excitedly asking if she really opened a shop and inviting herself over. Beaming with joy, Mina blushes and happily declares that they are now. The two friends share a laugh, with Melia agreeing that she feels wonderfully at ease in their company. As evening begins to fall, Mina asks if Melia plans on staying the night at their inn. Her father recommends she stay, warning that monsters become much more active after dark. However, Melia politely declines, explaining her familiars are waiting, and she doesn't want to worry them by staying out. Waving goodbye to the family, she hurries off into the evening as they call out for her to be careful. Once outside the village walls, she crouches down and asks Onyx for a special favor, which he readily accepts. As Onyx grows to his full size, he invites her to climb aboard for the journey home, and she readily agrees. With that, her divine familiar takes to the skies, leaving the sleeping village far behind. As they fly, the sun is still visible just above the horizon, but it's getting dark. With fluorite on her head, she looks down worriedly, noting that the sun is still just barely visible. They soar over the vast forest at top speed, hoping to make it back before nightfall. As they continue their flight, she finally spots the welcome sight of her cottage in the distance. Onyx proudly announces their safe arrival, and she warmly thanks him for the swift journey home. Suddenly, however, a flock of strange, shadowy bird-like creatures appears in the sky above them. The creatures have wide, unsettling eyes and long, tendril-like tails, clearly a type of monster. Without warning, the monstrous flock swarms them, catching both Melia and Onyx completely by surprise. From her hair, a worried fluorite confirms that they are indeed under attack by hostile monsters. Melia tries to swat the creatures away, crying out for them to stop their relentless assault. Just then, Ruby emerges from her pocket and unleashes a powerful stream of divine fire at the swarm. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of assailants, Onyx struggles to hold on, wondering what to do. Suddenly, a brilliant, blinding flash of light erupts from the sky, momentarily obscuring everything from view. In an instant, a mysterious, sharp object slices through the air, dispatching several monsters at once. The defeated creatures fall limply to the forest floor below, their attack completely neutralized. Landing safely on the ground, Onyx breathes a sigh of relief, realizing they have been saved. Dizzy from the sudden turn of events, Melia clutches her head, desperately trying to understand what just happened. Her mysterious savior is revealed to be Lyross, who stands amidst the fallen monsters. He dismisses her thanks, urgently telling her to get inside the safety of her divinely protected home. Heeding his command, she quickly guides her other animal familiars into the cottage. As the last light of day fades, she calls out for Lyross to join them inside. Once inside, the divine familiar, Seraphi, gently heals Ruby, who rests peacefully in her wool. Relieved that everyone is safely home, she watches as Seraphi prepares to tend to Onyx next. She turns to properly thank Lyross, but is met with a surprisingly cold and intense glare. Completely bewildered by his sudden shift in demeanor, she simply stares back at him with a questioning look. He continues to give her a chilling, silent stare, the warmth from moments before completely gone. With a grim expression, he finally breaks the silence and begins to speak about the monsters. He explains that the monsters that appear at night are relentless, and that she should have known the danger. He then scolds her, asking if she acted recklessly, thinking her powerful familiars would simply protect her. Stunned into silence by his harsh words, she is unable to formulate a response to his accusation. With her head hung low, she quietly insists that was never her intention at all. However, he presses her further, demanding to know what her intention was then, but she remains silent. He turns to leave, telling her to think more carefully before acting as he exits the house. The door slams shut behind him, leaving her standing alone in the sudden echoing silence. A worried Onyx hops over, gently asking if she is all right after Lyross's angry outburst. Her attention is finally drawn to Onyx, and she takes a moment to assess his condition after the battle. She gasps in horror, realizing for the first time the sheer number of wounds covering his body. Melia sits dejectedly, feeling she had let her guard down against the monster. She recalls Lyross's kind words, realizing she might have been naive to the demon's nature. Crying, she tearfully apologizes to her familiars for all the pain and worry she caused them. Fluorite immediately insists that she must rest and recover for the remainder of the day. Another one of her companions tells her to leave everything to them from now on. However, Melia resolves that she cannot continue to be such a burden to her new family. Exhausted by the ordeal and her conflicting emotions, she collapses onto her bed. She blames herself for everything, believing that her misjudgment led to this terrible outcome. Lying there, she reflects on how all the power she wields was simply gifted by the god. Her thoughts darken as she concludes that she herself isn't special or strong at all. Her mind suddenly flashes back to the cold, impersonal cityscape of her previous world. She remembers the harsh voice of her former boss berating her for her incompetence. The memory of her past self, feeling worthless and overwhelmed by work, floods her mind. Returning to the present, sunlight streams into her room as she lies on the bed. Getting up, she quietly walks downstairs, now only concerned for her companion's well-being. She carefully pushes open the door at the bottom of the stairs. Peeking out, she lets out a small gasp of surprise at the scene before her. Her entire family of familiars is there, greeting her with a cheerful, "Good morning." Relieved, she asks if they are all recovered, learning that a creature named Seraphy healed them. Onyx then steps forward to explain that he only flew because he was certain she would be safe. Fluorite peeks out from his hiding spot, also apologizing for being careless and letting his guard down. However, a small cat-like familiar interjects, insisting that the blame is not hers alone. The fluffy rabbit agrees, adding that she just needs to be more careful from now on. All the other familiars quickly chime in, voicing their wholehearted agreement with the encouraging sentiment. Deeply touched by their support, Melia resolves to strive to become a master worthy of them. Onyx immediately puffs out his chest proudly, insisting that she already is a worthy master. They all express their love, revealing that the god himself told them to stay by her side. Surrounding her, they declare that they just want her to know how much they all love her. A single happy tear rolls down her cheek as she is overcome with emotion by their words. With a warm and grateful smile, she looks at her precious familiars and thanks them for everything. The cat familiar winks, cheerfully telling her that a smile suits her much better than sadness. Melia thanks him, then confidently states that Lyross will surely understand if he reflects on his actions. Her thoughts then drift back to the mysterious and powerful demon she encountered, Lyross. She realizes that even though he was born with immense power, he must have learned to control it. Looking down at her own hands, she begins to contemplate her own unique situation and abilities. She considers the incredible powers that were generously gifted to her by the benevolent god. Furthermore, she thinks about the unique abilities that belong to each of her dear familiars. Filled with a new sense of resolve, she decides she must learn to use all these powers properly. Onyx immediately volunteers to join her, mentioning his unique ability to sense people's presence. Delighted by his offer, she tells him that having him along will be incredibly reassuring. Deciding to close her shop for the day, she prepares to head out on a new mission. With newfound determination, she marches into the forest, intending to search for Lyross. She remembers him saying he stays in the woods, so he won't frighten the local villagers. Deep within the trees, Onyx senses a presence nearby, guiding her further into the forest. Although nervous about monsters, she reminds herself that this time she came prepared with a weapon. A sudden rustle in the bushes ahead puts her on high alert, and she steels her nerves. Whipping out her dagger, she prepares to defend herself from what she assumes is a monster. However, Fluorite quickly calls out from her head, telling her to wait and that she's wrong. Confused, but trusting her familiar, she cautiously lowers her weapon and peers into the foliage. A strange two-headed snake emerges from the brush, surprising her with its unusual appearance. To her complete astonishment, the creature seems to be asking her to follow it, deeper into the woods. As she follows the strange guide, she notices the fog around them growing progressively thicker. She nervously wonders where the creature is leading her, questioning if it's truly not a monster. The two-headed snake leads her through the mist, toward a brightly lit opening in the trees. She emerges from the fog to find a breathtakingly beautiful and serene lake before her. From the water, a massive, majestic snake rises, welcoming the one who has received its divine protection. The giant, sparkling creature towers over the edge of the lake, its presence overwhelming. Her heart pounds in her chest as she stammers, asking Fluorite if this giant snake is... Her eyes widen in shock as she realizes she is in the presence of a divine beast. Standing before the creature, she understands that she has entered its sacred, protected territory. She quickly apologizes for trespassing, but the divine beast calmly tells her not to worry. The great snake explains it, sent its familiar to guide her here, wanting to meet her. Understanding the situation, Melia gratefully thanks the magnificent divine beast for its kindness and invitation. She then looks up in surprise, calling out to her small familiar, Fluorite, with a question. The giant beast subsequently addresses Fluorite directly, asking its subordinate to explain the situation. Fluorite explains that his master is looking for a specific person and requires their assistance. Lowering its massive head, the divine beast generously offers to lend its power to her search. It asks her to provide a mental image of the person she seeks, the demon boy, Lyross. The great snake then begins to resonate, sending powerful sonic waves out across the entire forest. The invisible waves of sound expand with incredible speed, seeking out their intended target. Melia is left completely dazed by the immense power, realizing it found him in an instant. The powerful resonance quickly subsides, having accomplished its task in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, Lyross materializes right before her, telling a very disoriented Melia to snap out of it. Still dizzy from the experience, she stumbles forward, calling his name in complete shock as she falls. A moment later, she sits up holding her head, trying to process what just happened. With teary eyes, Fluorite explains that the resonance caused her to pass out, asking if she's all right. She reassures him that she is fine, but then wonders how Lyross suddenly appeared beside her. Onyx proudly explains that after they located him, he personally flew and brought the demon back. Melia is completely stunned to learn this elaborate plan was executed while she was unconscious. Lyross looks away with a slight blush, admitting that he was quite surprised by the sudden summons. Lyross recalls being startled in the forest, thinking he was being attacked by a simple chicken. He explains to Melia that he only followed the creature because he realized it was her familiar. The demon looks on in disbelief, shocked that a divine beast is here, especially with her passed out. The divine beast apologizes for acting rashly, explaining it was simply fulfilling its subordinate's request. Lyross calmly tells the great snake that there is no need for it to apologize to him. With a respectful bow, he expresses his gratitude for being summoned to such a sacred place. The divine beast seems to nod in acknowledgement, pleased by the demon's respectful demeanor. As a parting gift for the demon and the god's chosen one, it bestows a special blessing upon them. In a brilliant flash of light, the divine beast disappears from sight completely. They are both left stunned as the magical lake vanishes, returning the area to a normal forest. Melia then notices a strange, sparkling object has been left in her hand after the encounter. A system window reveals it is a divine scale, a proof of recognition that allows communication with familiars. Her eyes widen in absolute amazement at the incredibly powerful and rare gift she has received. Lyross is equally astonished, remarking on how unbelievable it is to receive a gift from a divine beast. They both react at the same time, realizing with a start that their thoughts had just synchronized. She asks if he also received something, explaining she got a scale, and he confirms he did. He reveals he was gifted an elixir seal, a powerful medicine capable of healing any wound. Melia puts the pieces together, realizing the divine beast was looking for her familiar to find her. Taking a bite of a snack, she finally gets to the point, starting to apologize for Onyx's behavior. She then formally asks if he has any business with her, confirming that she was looking for him. Standing in the quiet forest, she turns to Lyross and sincerely apologizes for her actions yesterday. She explains she has reflected and now, like him, wants to learn to properly use her own strength. Lyross looks away for a moment, seeming to dismiss her apology before he speaks. To her surprise, he apologizes in turn, admitting that his own words were far too harsh. He thinks to himself that he has no right to apologize after she was the one who helped him. The demon clarifies that he wasn't criticizing her, but was simply frustrated with himself. Melia looks up at him with wide, surprised eyes, taken aback by his sudden confession. He looks down at her with a serious and unwavering expression, revealing his true feelings. She realizes with a start that he was genuinely concerned for her safety, just like her own family. A brilliant, warm smile spreads across her face as she thanks him for worrying about her. Completely flustered by her radiant and genuine expression, Lyross is left momentarily speechless. As thanks, she invites him to her home for a meal, which he accepts as her familiars celebrate. Later, at her cottage, Lyross takes a bite of the food and is amazed by how delicious it is. She explains she got the recipe from a village inn, and he remarks on the shop's interesting name. Melia fondly recalls Mina, the kind girl from the inn who helped her when she first arrived. Lyross smiles wistfully, admitting that he would like to visit this village of hers someday. However, his smile fades as he resigns himself to the fact that it would be impossible for him. When she asks if he is interested in the village, He admits that he is, just a little. He confesses that while he never cared before, he's now curious about the village that accepted her. Blushing slightly at his words, she feels a strange but pleasant warmth spread through her heart. She smiles warmly, admitting his sentiment is nice, then asks if she said something strange. Lost in her thoughts, she wishes that one day she could visit the village inn together with him. Lyross calls her name, snapping her out of her daydream, and she nervously insists it was nothing. Before he leaves, she asks him to return tomorrow to receive a proper thank you gift, which he accepts. That night, she stands outside her home, determined to properly repay him for all his help. Down in her personal mind, she triumphantly declares her intention to forge a gift by morning. While she cannot help him directly, she resolves to be useful through her blacksmithing skills. She begins mining vigorously, hoping to unearth rare materials like mithril or even orichalcum. With each powerful strike of her pickaxe, she hopes for some high-quality materials to finally appear. Her persistent efforts finally pay off as she dislodges several chunks of ore from the cavern wall. Her eyes are immediately drawn to a particularly large, sparkling gemstone that has been unearthed. A system window identifies the gem as sphalerite, a stone that can grant items special skills. Clutching the rare material, a brilliant idea strikes her, and she realizes it is the perfect component. The very next morning, a visitor arrives at the village chief's estate, calling out for Mark. The scene shifts to reveal a hand holding an official letter sealed with a royal crest. Inside, a regal elven woman asks Mark if the letter from the royal family concerns a certain child. With a grave expression, Mark confirms that the letter is indeed about Melia and her recent activities. He subsequently hands the important letter over to the elf, entrusting her to read it for Melia. After reading its contents, the elven woman decides she must consult with someone about the matter. Her professional demeanor vanishes as she cheers, ecstatic at the chance to finally meet a familiar. The next day, she presents Lyross with a gift, earrings imbued with illusion magic. She explains that she found a rare material just the day before, perfect for crafting them. With a proud smile, she explains they can alter or even completely hide the wearer's appearance. Completely surprised by the thoughtful gift, Lyross asks why she would do something like this for him. She reveals her plan to hide his demonic horns so they can finally visit the village together. He's completely flustered by the idea, shocked that she really intends to take him into town. She clarifies that while she accepts him as he is, the villagers would find it impossible. Seeing his lonely expression, she explains she just wanted to help and apologizes if she overstepped. Deeply moved, he acknowledges how much thought she put into everything just for his sake. With a gentle smile, he puts on one of the earrings and sincerely thanks her for the gift. As he holds it, she looks up with wide-eyed excitement, asking if he's really going to wear it. With a brilliant flash of magical light, his prominent horns suddenly vanish from sight completely. He stands there, fully transformed, now appearing as a handsome elf with long white hair. Touching the side of his head in disbelief, he admits that he can't quite tell the difference. Melia stares up in awe, her heart skipping a beat at his dashing new appearance. He asks if his horns are truly gone, and she nods enthusiastically, confirming they are invisible. Now confident in his disguise, he grabs her hand, eagerly suggesting they head to the village immediately. However, a moment of uncertainty hits him, and he wonders if this plan will really be okay. She gives him a brilliant, reassuring smile, confidently telling him that everything will be perfectly fine. They soon arrive at Mina's inn, and as he hesitates, she encourages him to step inside with her. As he hesitates outside the inn, Lyross asks Melia one last time if she is sure about this. Upon entering, they are warmly welcomed by Mina's father, while Mina herself happily calls out to Melia. A woman with a long braid greets them, and Mina proudly introduces her mother for the first time. Completely surprised by this new development, Melia stammers a polite greeting to the innkeeper's wife. She then turns to Lyross, explaining that this is also her first time meeting Mina's mother. The mother asks if Lyross is a friend, and warmly invites them to try their delicious food. Unsure what to order, he simply says he would be happy to eat anything they can serve him. She suggests a drink instead, kindly mentioning that they have some fresh fruit in the kitchen. He gratefully orders 2 drinks, and she promises to bring them right out to the new friends. As they prepare to leave, Mina's mother cheerfully tells them both to please visit again soon. Walking down the street with their drinks, Melia expresses her relief that everything went so smoothly. Lyross turns to her with a genuine smile, showing his fangs as he sincerely thanks her for this. With a bright smile of her own, she tells him he's welcome before her expression turns thoughtful. Filled with newfound confidence, she enthusiastically offers to give him a full tour of the entire village. He agrees, and she happily begins leading him through the various streets of her new home. She cheerfully points out the village chief's large estate, a place he is already familiar with. He admits that while he has seen the village from above, walking through it feels completely different. With a slight smile, he finds the experience interesting and thanks her again for this opportunity. Melia blushes, pleased to see that he seems to be enjoying his first proper visit to the village. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out Melia's name, causing them both to turn around in surprise. It's Mark, who explains he was just on his way to find her, and she happily greets him. The village chief gives Lyross a long, scrutinizing look, who sweats nervously under the intense stare. Mark's expression shifts to surprise as he stammers, asking who this mysterious person could possibly be. He shouts in alarm, realizing Lyross is a demon and demanding to know why he is here. Melia quickly clarifies that Mark already knows Lyross and was simply surprised to see him in the village. She explains she was introducing him around, and Mark deduces her power is what's hiding his horns. Lyross bows his head slightly, apologizing for any trouble his presence may have caused in the village. However, Mark smiles warmly, stating that he is actually glad Lyross seems to like their small town. He then invites Melia to his home for a discussion, reassuring her that Lyross is welcome to join. Melia and Lyross exchange a confused look, completely bewildered by the village chief's sudden invitation. She hesitantly agrees, wondering what important matter he could possibly want to talk about with her. With a sense of unease, she and Lyross follow Mark up the grand staircase of his estate. Inside, Mark introduces them to the new guildmaster, and Melia instantly recognizes the elf named Faye. She realizes it's the lost man she helped before, and Mark explains he used to work at the capital. Faye kindly tells her to consult him anytime, and she bows politely, agreeing to do so. With a charming smile, Faye thanks her for her help the other day and formally greets her. His demeanor suddenly turns serious, however, as he asks where her attendants are today. Melia panics, stunned that he somehow knows about her familiars and unsure of what she should do. From her shoulder, Fluorite and Ruby suddenly pop out, asking if it's finally their time to shine. The new guildmaster's eyes go wide in absolute shock, letting out a silent scream of disbelief. Overcome with joy, the new guildmaster bounces around the room, ecstatic to finally see real divine familiars. He then kneels before the small creatures, respectfully offering them a plush cushion to sit upon. Her companions ask if she is all right, while the guildmaster gazes upon them with pure adoration. Now seated comfortably on the cushion, Ruby and Fluorite look on with an air of smug satisfaction. Faye fawns over the cute creatures, prompting an exasperated sigh from Mark, who mutters that he hasn't changed. Now seated, Melia concludes Faye must be trustworthy since he knows her secret, and agrees to discuss the matter. With a serious expression, Mark begins to explain that rumors of a skilled blacksmith have reached the royal capital. Melia is completely stunned, exclaiming in disbelief that news of her work has spread so far. He continues, revealing that these rumors reached the king, who requested information about the mysterious new blacksmith. The involvement of the king leaves her utterly speechless, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. Mark then reveals that he had previously sent one of the daggers she had crafted to the king. In response, he holds up a letter with a royal seal, explaining the king now wishes to meet her. Overwhelmed by this incredible turn of events, she leaps from her seat, letting out a cry of disbelief. With a grave look, Mark states that this is where the real problem begins, a single tear tracing his cheek. He worries that her existence will become widely known, and some will inevitably notice her divine companions. Lyross agrees, adding that races like elves or demons possess the ability to perceive such divine power. Faye calmly confirms this, explaining it is not uncommon for individuals to possess the power to sense familiars. A wave of worry washes over Melia as she processes this new and potentially dangerous information. The little familiars look on innocently, seemingly unaware of the danger their divine nature might attract. Mark and Faye explain that her rare ability is incredibly valuable, and people might try to exploit her for it. Mark confesses his worries, admitting he's concerned he cannot protect her all by himself. He therefore proposes they tell the king the truth, hoping to secure his official protection for her. Melia is left completely speechless by his sudden and very serious proposal. She questions what patronage entails, and Faye clarifies they must ensure the king trusts her. To reassure her, Mark reveals he is the son of the former king, and the current king is his brother. She gasps, realizing that's why his sword bore the royal crest, as he's a prince. Completely unaware of his status, she quickly bows and apologizes profusely for her past impertinence. Still processing the news, she then asks why a prince would be serving as a simple village chief. He asks her to raise her head, patiently waiting for her to compose herself before he explains. He explains he renounced his succession rights to avoid conflict and was given this sacred village to protect. He smiles, explaining that generations of non-succeeding royals have protected this village as its chief. Having explained his past, he formally invites her to the capital to meet his brother, the king. She admits the situation feels unreal, and she's unsure what to do about the incredible offer. Moreover, she worries that this will change her peaceful life and potentially endanger her beloved familiars. Meanwhile, in the royal castle, a young princess excitedly asks if her father has truly arrived. A voice off-screen seems to confirm her identity, mentioning the name Angelica with some hesitation. The elegant princess, Angelica, expresses her excitement, looking forward to meeting the creator of the beautiful sword. The chapter concludes with a shot of a hammer, striking hot metal on an anvil. Sometime later, Melia sits at a table, noting how the vegetables here are not as tasty as Forgemon's. Lyross asks if she understands, and she panics, realizing she had accidentally spoken her thoughts aloud. Lyross calmly confirms that her thoughts were written all over her face during the entire meal. He suggests they find a more comfortable place to settle in before he explains the situation to her. Once seated, she asks if the food is bad, and he explains that delicious vegetables don't grow well here. He then reveals that the closer they get to the capital, the weaker the powers of familiars become. In densely populated cities, the familiar's power weakens, making it much more difficult for crops to grow. She immediately recalls the guildmaster's strange warning, realizing this is what he must have meant. Overcome with worry, she quickly opens her basket to check on the well-being of her beloved companions. Inside the special subspace of her basket, she finds all of her familiars sound asleep. Apologizing for waking them, she worriedly asks if they are all right after their long journey. Fluorite pops his head out with a sparkle, gently asking his master what seems to be the problem. She immediately asks him if it's true that their powers weaken the closer they get to the city. He reassures her that they are all fine and just sleeping, and she apologizes for not knowing. Fluorite smiles, explaining they all knew and came willingly, then thanks her for her deep concern. Deeply touched by their loyalty, she realizes they came prepared and thanks them from her heart. She then turns to Lyross with a bright smile, thanking him for the explanation and feeling much better. The very next morning, Melia stands on a cobblestone street, holding her basket and ready to depart. A man with a carriage announces their departure, explaining they should reach the capital by day's end. Just then, a small barefoot girl in a simple white dress approaches her, asking her to buy a flower. The girl holds up the flowers and politely asks again if she would be willing to purchase one. The carriage driver looks on in surprise, questioning if she is actually going to buy the flower. She notices the flower is wilting, wondering if it's due to the familiar's weakened power in the city. However, the driver scolds the girl, telling her he won't buy a flower that is already wilting. Startled by his harsh words, the little girl immediately turns and runs away down a narrow alley. Melia watches in shock, distressed that the girl disappeared before she could say or do anything to help. Lyross explains the girl is an orphan, adding there are many more like her throughout the city. Troubled by this revelation, Melia presses her face against the window, gazing out at the city streets. She sees countless poor children huddled on the sidewalks, completely ignored by the adults passing by. A voice explains that government aid is minimal, leaving the orphans with a chronic shortage of food. Overwhelmed by the heartbreaking sight of their suffering, tears begin to well up in Melia's eyes. Seeing her distress, Lyross looks on with a concerned expression, softly uttering her name. Wiping her tears with newfound resolve, she stands and firmly tells Lyross that she is going. Without another word, she abruptly leaps out of the still-moving carriage, surprising everyone inside. The driver calls out her name in alarm, but she simply asks him to wait for a moment. She runs back through the streets, desperately trying to retrace her steps to find the young girl. Remembering the alley, she quickly locates the rundown building the little flower girl ran into. Peering through a grimy window, she realizes that it seems to be a house where orphans gather. Inside, the conditions are bleak, with several children sitting quietly in a sparse, dilapidated room. Taking a deep breath, she cautiously pushes open the door and calls out a hesitant greeting. A young boy immediately confronts her at the door, aggressively demanding to know who she is. She calmly introduces herself as Melia, explaining that she is a traveler on her way to the capital. He scoffs at her, asking what she wants, and she replies that she has something for them. Using her item box, she materializes a mountain of bread, stunning the boy into complete silence. Completely bewildered by the magical display, he demands to know where she got it all from. Just then, Lyross appears and grabs her shoulder, sternly telling her that she needs to stop. He questions her actions, arguing that a temporary handout is just false kindness that solves nothing. She struggles against his grip, trying to protest his harsh words as the orphan boy looks on. She argues that eating today gives them strength for tomorrow, which they can use to find work. However, the boy bitterly retorts that it's impossible for them since they don't own any weapons. Hearing this, a brilliant idea strikes her, and she offers to lend him a sturdy dagger. He takes the weapon skeptically, asking if she is sure and warning that he might not return it. With a radiant smile, she tells him it's fine and that he can keep the well-made dagger. Completely taken aback by her generosity, he mutters that she is a strange person for helping them. With a tear rolling down his cheek, he finally manages to offer her a quiet, heartfelt thank you. He then turns and calls out to the other children, announcing that they can eat the food. Melia watches as the orphans, including the flower girl, eagerly share the bread she provided. Her carriage driver looks on in disbelief, amazed by her act of kindness and calling her a good person. He then urges her back into the carriage, reminding her they must reach the capital by day's end. With a final look back, she climbs aboard, and the horse-drawn carriage continues on its way. Sitting inside, she reflects somberly on the familiar's weakness, admitting she knew nothing about their plight. Tears well in her eyes as she considers the injustice of her own blessed life while they suffer. She reflects that Lyross was right, and her act of kindness was only a temporary solution to their problems. Feeling completely helpless, she floats in a dark void of thought, wondering what she can possibly do. A sudden idea strikes her, and she wonders if crafting more daggers for them would be helpful. However, she quickly dismisses the idea, realizing that not all of the children would be able to fight. As she continues to ponder the difficult situation, Lyross looks on with a thoughtful expression. He then asks her if she intends to bring this issue up with the king, startling her with the suggestion. With a slight smile, he points out that since she cares so much, this is the perfect opportunity. She admits that while she was ignorant of the problem before, now she feels she must do something. With a newfound sense of resolve, she turns to Lyross, a determined expression on her face. She decides to use her skills to ask the children what they need, and Lyross agrees it's a good idea. Now filled with purpose, she resolves to do whatever she can, no matter how small it might seem. Sometime later, the carriage finally arrives at the gates of the magnificent and sprawling royal palace. Melia stares up in absolute awe, completely overwhelmed by the sheer size and grandeur of the castle. The driver explains he has announced her arrival and will wait here for an attendant to retrieve her. With a grateful smile, she waves goodbye, thanking him for the long and safe journey to the capital. The large palace gates creak open, and a woman in a maid's uniform emerges to greet them. The maid politely confirms her identity as Melia and asks to see her letter of introduction. After reading the letter, the maid's expression brightens, saying she heard about her from Mark and has been waiting. She then apologizes for the delay and formally introduces herself as Marion, a servant to the king. Completely flustered to meet a royal servant, Melia quickly bows and introduces herself in turn. As she introduces herself, the maid Marion is internally smitten, thinking how adorable the little blacksmith is. Melia nervously explains that she is the blacksmith who has arrived from the village of Forgemen. Her formal and slightly flustered introduction seems to take the royal maid completely by surprise. Marion's eyes turn to hearts as she fawns over Melia, comparing her to an adorable little squirrel. Composing herself, the maid simply smiles and replies that she is well aware of who she is. She then leans in and whispers, revealing she knows all about her divine power and her familiars. Lyross explains that Mark must have already relayed the entire story, much to Melia's surprise. With a gentle smile, Marion reassures them, patting Melia's basket and telling her everything is fine. She promises that only she and the king know the truth, and that her secret will be kept safe. Overcome with relief, Melia lets out a happy sigh, glad to have another trustworthy ally. Marion then offers to guide them to their prepared room so they can rest from the journey. She leads them into a lavishly decorated suite, and Melia is stunned by its incredible beauty. The maid kindly suggests she rest before her audience with the king, which Melia gratefully accepts. Just as Marion is about to leave to fetch them drinks, Melia quickly calls out for her to wait. She nervously asks if it would be all right for her familiars to play freely within the room. Delighted by the request, Marion happily agrees, and Melia bows respectfully, thanking her for her kindness. Once alone, she opens her special basket and tells her companions that it's safe to come out. In a brilliant flash, all of her divine familiars burst forth, happy to finally stretch their legs. The fluffy sheep familiar immediately asks her master for a hug to help ease her travel fatigue. Not to be outdone, the large cow familiar chimes in, also asking for some pets and affection. Melia joyfully reunites with her large family of divine familiars, hugging them all warmly after their separation. Lyross is surprised by the size of her entourage, admitting he thought she only had small companions. He looks on with a calm and curious expression, taking in the strange and varied new sight. She explains a new familiar named Opal helped her bring everyone, petting the cow and sheep affectionately. A small, masked, monkey-like familiar then peeks out, offering to introduce the new members to Lyross. Melia calls out for the new familiar, Opal, to come forward and properly greet their guest. However, she looks around in confusion, unable to find the shy little creature anywhere in the room. Lyross kneels down, spotting the timid creature hiding in her basket and asking if this is the one. Opal hesitantly reaches out a tiny hand, seemingly about to accept Lyross's gentle and welcoming gesture. Melia is overjoyed by this development, explaining that the normally timid Opal is being incredibly brave. With a slight smile, Lyross shows his fangs as he formally introduces himself to the little creature. The sight of his fangs completely terrifies the shy familiar, who jumps back in absolute shock. Annoyed by the sudden scare, Opal quickly scurries away to hide from the intimidating demon. Melia watches with a disappointed expression, lamenting that the promising introduction was cut short. She sighs that it was going so well, but the shy creature ran off and hid. Just then, an elegant princess enters the room, asking about the sudden noise and greeting them. The princess looks directly at Melia, asking who she is, while the young blacksmith seems confused. Holding up a familiar dagger, she asks if Melia is the blacksmith who forged the impressive blade. Lyross glares at the intruder, calling her rude, but she simply asks if he doesn't recognize her,